making the Corsa for a long time now, so it was really only a question of when they would actually make the electric one. It's been out now for a good year and a half at this stage, maybe even 2 years, and you might actually pick one up on the second-hand market. But this has had a small update. At the start of this year, got a 4% increase in efficiency and a 10-kilometre extra bit of range in that battery for you. Now, the bones of it is identical to some of the other cars out there from the PSA group, such as the E208 and some of the Citroens, the Mach-E from the same brand as well. So we're going to have a good poke around because we've never had it on the channel before and find out if it's any good. At the front, it doesn't quite have the flare that you'd be hoping. Now, Opel are in general switching over to that Opel visor front, that kind of gloss black panel that runs all across the front, and we don't have it here. It looks very traditional with the grills across the top and down at the bottom here. Now, nice little bit of silver trim, but compared to a sister cousin, the E208 and some of the rivals out there, not quite as snazzy as the others. From the side, you can really see that B segment hatchback style. It's quite small actually. It's really only 4.06 meters long and not the tallest either, if you notice. So it's 1.45 meters tall, so quite condensed. Little E badge here just to indicate that it's the electric ones. Body coloured wing mirrors, a few nice touches. I like the wheels on it. These not oversized, not undersized, 16-inch. They're the bi-colour silver and black wheels. But yeah, I think it looks decent. Around the back now, and the features don't quite stand out as much as we'd like in this black colour, but look, we'll have a look anyway. So spoiler 6 out from the back housing, third light just in there, and hey, one of these, you don't get one of those now on every single new car that's coming out these days. But yeah, features are largely similar, I think, to the E208 at the back. This kind of heavy strong bar that runs across, and then the bumper as well, very similar shapes. Let's have a look inside it. Your switch is just underneath the badge there, and then that used as a handle as well to lift it up. The boot is okay. I think it sits somewhere in the middle of the competition, way bigger than the Honda E and the Fiat 500, but not quite as good as something like the Renault Zoe. So it's 309 litres of space, but you know, you still get plenty of luggage in there. Not bad at all. And if you want to fold down the seats, which are in a 60-40 split, you go out to about 1,118 litres, which is decent enough for a small city hatchback. Yeah, I think we're doing okay. Out in the Corsa E, and you know what, I'm enjoying myself. Pleasantly surprised at it. It's a little bit heavier than its other counterparts. So it's coming in at 1.53 tons. It's a 50 kilowatt hour battery, 45 of which is usable, stashed right underneath the seats here, underneath us, and it gives it a really low center of gravity. So when you're putting it in corners and you're having a bit of fun with it, it feels very stable, quite refined. A little bit bigger than it actually is because it's a B segment, it's a city hatchback really, not a huge amount of space in the back. And it takes the bumps quite well, I have to say. Those little ramps in housing estates, little potholes, things like that, it takes them quite comfortably. Whatever they've done with the sound insulation, even on motorways, is it's impressive. It's a little bit better than I was kind of expecting for a car this size. So yeah, it handles quite well. You stick it into a corner and yeah, nice and refined, very stable. And it's great as well when you come out of that corner and you plant your foot. You've got a tidy bit of power just there behind you. Now, it's not perfectly instantaneous like some other cars that I've been in, but it's still, it feels really good. It's electric power. That's one of the hallmarks of cars like this. So it's a 100 kilowatt motor. That's good for 136 PS and 260 Newton meters of torque. So this thing is no slouch. I mean, it's got a good bit of pick up and go. And if you did want to do the 0 to 100 kilometer an hour sprint, you'd be doing it in 8.1 seconds, which does make it the fastest of the whole Corsa range, only by a fraction of the 130 horsepower petrol version. So yeah, it feels really nippy, I have to say. Enjoying it. And depending on the style of driving that you want to do, you've got different drive modes. So I have spent a bit of time in this so far, and I spent a good bit of time in the E208, which is the sister car to this, and we'll get onto that in a moment. But there's 3 different driving modes, so I always just leave it in sport, but then I can toggle down with this switch just down here at the center console, down into normal, and then into eco. And as I'm toggling through those now, I can really feel the throttle response just dropping. Eco mode now, and you really have to press it to get any action out of it. Back up to sport. Yeah. Well, there we go. And that's the way to drive it for me. But you can also toggle between 2 different levels of regen. And if you don't know what regen is, by the way, check out one of our recent videos there. We do a whole segment on it. It is when you lift your foot off the throttle, or you're going down a hill or something like that, coming up to traffic lights, you lift your foot off the accelerator, and I'll do it now here. I am tracking at 60 kilometers, lift my foot off, down to 55, 50, 45, 40, and I'm not even pressing the brake pedal. So the motor harnesses the energy in the car, turns into electrical power to store in the battery and slows you down. It's fantastic. So yeah, I'm out now. I could drive around for 10 kilometers on roads like these, and I probably won't touch the brake pedal once. So yeah, nice bit of fun. Let's have a look around the inside, and you know what? It's decent. So yeah, there's a few scratchy plastics around, especially as you drop down the car. But yeah, like, it's a decent feel overall. Now, I've been in some cars, similar to some of the competitors to these cars that are just appointed a little bit nicely. So the E208, the GT spec of that was much nicer. Even the Fiat 500e, you get the La Prima spec on that. Or what else was there? The Honda E as well. That was fantastic, the interior and that. But I'm absolutely not disappointed now, because there's a huge variation on the Corsa in terms of specs as well. There's about €11,000 difference by the time you go from the cheaper specs up to the more expensive one, even 12 or 13,000 actually. But everything's absolutely fine. I mean, steering wheel feels nice. Apart from a few scratchy plastics, decent kind of soft touch plastics just there, nice kind of gloss, piano black materials. Yeah, like, it's okay. And you've got all the creature comforts that you kind of need in here as well. You're smattering the buttons on the steering wheel for voice activation. You can change the cruise control on it. So you got a 7-inch display behind the steering wheel here. Driver's information, so your battery percentage, but you can toggle through what you want that to display. Have traditional dials, navigation, stats and details on how you're driving and your efficiency and things like that. Up the stalks behind here, you've got aircon. You can have that on automatic as well. Demisters, heated seats, that's nice to have. 7-inch screen here as well, touch screen. Now, there's not a lot going on, let's be honest, especially, if you come out of something like a Tesla and you get into this and you go, well, okay, that's quite different. But we're not really expecting at this price point at all, are we? But there's not a huge amount going on. Now, you can, change around your radio stations and things like that, of course. If we press on this car icon here, you can change things like traction control, various things like that, just standard stuff. If we go to apps, and here is kind of an illustration of what I mean about not much going on. Now, we can hook up Android Auto to get access to your phone, so in a way it's kind of moot, because that's all I'll ever do. The second I get into this car, plug it in, Android Auto, there we go. But if I click on this car, or this icon for vehicle apps, the only one that's there is energy. You click on that and it just gives you some averages on how you're driving. Not that much. But look, overall, like, absolutely fine. I have no problems with this. You'd be perfectly comfortable in it, and it does the job fairly well. But then let's go back and talk about the platform. So the PSA Alliance, PSA Group, if you want to call it, there's Peugeot, Citroën, this Opel or Vauxhall that I'm in now, and various other brands. They're sharing what they're calling the ECMP platform, and it's what this car is based on. So same with E208, and they're almost identical cars. Now inside, they'll appoint the car a little bit different. Some of the screens outside, it'll look a little bit different, all right. But the bones of the car, the structure of the car is pretty much identical. And that platform houses a 50 kilowatt hour battery, 45 kilowatt hours of which is usable. So that gives it a WLTP range up in the mid 300s, which is pretty decent. Now, it's well beaten by some other cars out there. Even what's coming down the line from the MG4 will easily beat that, but it's still pretty decent overall. Now, WLTP figures, we all know, are quite optimistic. So I've had this car now, driving it around today a good bit, and I reset the trip meter this morning so I can keep track of it. And I've done 82 kilometers, but I'm averaging 10.7 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. So that means that I'm on track for well up past 300. I will probably exceed the WLTP range because mostly I'm just pottering around country roads like this at 60 kilometers an hour. I was on the motorway for a bit, but traffic was heavy, so it was easy going. And this is where the optimism comes in. If you put this car onto the motorway, 1 or 2 degrees Celsius in winter, you're barreling down, a couple of people in the back and heating's on and all that, you're dropping down under 250 anyway, maybe, the 200 mark or thereabouts. So you got to take that range figure with a pinch of salt. But look, people who are driving EVs, they get used to it. You get used to where the charger's on. We won't go down that rabbit hole, that conversation now, I don't think. Let's talk charging on the Corsa, and this is where we do it. Press in the cap, pops open, some little rubberized stoppers just there, and thankfully they are actually tied on so you don't lose them when you're filling up. Little indicators here where you can lock as well, and different color lights to come on to show you states of charge and stuff like that. So CCS combo here on DC charging when you really want to ramp the electrons into it, and that goes up to 100 kilowatts peak. Now of course you're not going to get that over the full nod up to 100% charge, but it will peak at 100, which is actually quite good when you compare it to the competition in these smaller cars. Now in AC 7.4 comes as standard, 7.4 kilowatts, so you're still only talking about 6-7 hours, something like that, to completely fill up at home. You can option 11 kilowatts in most markets, but for me it really should be standard, at least 11 kilowatts. A little car like this, you want to be able to plug in when you're going to see a movie or with a friend, plug in for 2.5 hours or something like that, and you put in 200 kilometers into the car. That's what you want to see. But look, in terms of the competition, if we're looking at what this is up against, it's doing absolutely fine. It's actually doing quite good, really. Let's just talk about space for a second and see how this is set up. Now I'm 6'2", 1.88 meters, and I can fit in this car very, very comfortably actually. So you can move the seat up or down. So that's set down to the bottom because I like to sit a little bit lower. And let's have a look at headroom. Yeah, still decent amount just there. Now you've got rake and reach on the steering wheel, so you can find the spot that you like there as well. Be nice and comfortable for you. So yeah, this is set up for me now. That's a comfortable driving position for me. Let's have a look in the back and see if there's any space in there for baby seats and other adults. Right, let's have a go at this. Now, reminder, 2 people at 6'2". The driver's set up for me. Can I fit in the back? No, not even close. My knees are up at my chin. It's not going to work. But look, let's be fair to the car. This is testing it out for 2 people at 6'2". And how often is that going to happen? Probably not really. So what do we make of the Corsa E then, having spent a little bit of time with it? Well, do you know what? It's a very, very comfortable car. And I mean that in 2 senses. One is it's very comfortable to drive. Yeah, suspension set up nicely. There's decent range in it. There's decent space in it once you accept that it's a hatchback style city car. But it also fits a very, very comfortable segment of the market because this doesn't have that spectacular, that unique look of something like the Honda E or possibly even the Fiat 500e. It doesn't have the flair of that car or its sister car, the E208. But it's going to hit that nice little point in the middle of the market where people aren't looking for something that sits out there as quite obviously EV. I mean, this just looks like a general Corsa to the casual observer. And a lot of people like that. They just want something that'll get them around, cheap to run. And this car coming in the early 30s in EV terms is actually quite decent value. Now that'll be challenged in time with the Megane and the MG4 coming online, but for now this is going to suit a lot of people. But thanks very much for watching. Jump onto the website, theAA, if you're thinking about getting any type of home insurance, breakdown rescue, things like that, and we'll see you on the next one.